No, I was just saying though, it's so lovely to see everyone in good spirits. Did you all eat something really nice last night, or did you all get your Christmas gifts early?
It's cold over here, so I'm just in a good mood because it's a new day.
Oh, good, wonderful. It's always a wonderful day to be alive. Yeah,
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
I think we'll be starting in a minute, so
Yeah.
The students will be joining us on this, right? Or
Yes.
Yes.
When they join, Janisha can or promote them. But if she doesn't promote them, they can always ask questions
yeah,
through the chat room. So we should be good either way. Yeah.
that's fine. Okay, so I'll just go on and start now. I know we have some of our attendees already there raring to go. Thank you everyone for joining today on our Global Ubuntu Dialogue. It's such a pleasure to always come here every Saturday just to have these conversations. And I just want to welcome you all formally again today, wherever you are. You can always tell us on the comment section where you're watching us from or where you're joining us from. And we will always love to connect with other people. Today, we still have our very own Dr. Paul Easterling, our Oga of Humanities, and he is going to be continuing with the collective action course that he started off last week. So I would hand over to him now to give us a great start because he has some introduction to do.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to my students. If you are here, looking forward to our class today. So last week we began with just a discussion of what Pan-Africanism is and how we can understand it in the long term, according to Kwame Ntanbu. Today we'll go into more of the modern Pan-African movements, and we'll first discuss the reasons why Pan-Africanism came about, the actions that preceded it, and what made it a necessary thing, and then we'll go into some of the specifics of certain heroes. In particular, I want to talk about Kwame Nkrumah and his understanding of Pan-Africanism, because he's one of the more dynamic characters in African history. So we'll go like that. All right. So I just want to you want to go forward, Dr. We'll go with the questions.
Okay, I thought you were going to share your screen, so I'm just giving you a moment to.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do that.
Because it's just following up from the conversations that we started off last week, and
yeah. All right. So yeah.
So that was supposed to be my first question.
Yes, yeah.
I know you're going to be looking at Marfa today. So I wanted to ask, what exactly is it? If you can shed more light and tell us what it is, because I'm interested. I want to know what it's all about.
Yeah. So the Maafa is a key Swahili term that means great disaster, and so I'm getting all this from Dr. Maulana Karenga's intro to African American Studies text. And it's a modern day collective action is centered on, just to begin, a modern day collective action is centered on the struggle against European collective or cultural hegemony and oppression. All right, so we Pan-African movements are again necessary because it's a natural reaction to the oppression that we have experienced both on the continent and in the diaspora, the Americas, South America, the Caribbean, and Central America, and so forth. So Maafa is again great disaster, according to the Kiswahili translation. And to give more, I guess, girth to the definition, Karenga defines it as a morally demonstrative act of genocide that is not only against the people themselves but against humanity. So it's not just the fact that you have oppressed and enslaved Black people, but this is an act against all of humanity itself, and that goes for any act of genocide or any act of oppression. It's not just an act against those that particular people or those particular people, but it's against all of humanity because we are one human family. All right. And so the ways in which this was um, morally demonstrative, is through a destruction of human life, just the human life that was destroyed and died and perished as a consequence of this myoph. And again, this is through colonialism as well as enslavement in the New World. So we're not just talking about enslavement; we're talking about what happened on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. All right, and then there's a destruction of human culture. All right, so when you colonize a people or enslave a people, you must strip them of their humanity in order to keep them in that position. Otherwise, the people will you know collect themselves and move forward. But to keep them down, you need to destroy their culture, destroy their vision of themselves, destroy their mechanisms of what makes them a people. All right, destroy their name, destroy their language, uh, destroy their the methods of knowledge creation. These are everything that this is everything that we're talking about. All right, so it's not just it's not just a matter of enslavement and killing people. This is making people believe that they are less than human, that they are less than human. All right, as well for Biafra, it's a destruction of human possibility. So when you destroy people's culture and destroy people's name and their understanding of who they are, you destroy any possibility they have of recollecting themselves or developing themselves. It's you're stunting their growth, right? So this is a thing that carries on through generations upon generations upon generations. So, in addition to that, you destroy their existing economic and political systems. As we were talking about yesterday in the indigenous knowledge class, is that African systems have always been in place and have always had a strong grounding in culture. So when African countries and nations were invaded and destroyed for the purposes of colonization and enslavement, you destroy everything. Everything goes, including those political and economic systems they use to sustain themselves. Right. So you devalue whatever currency they have, and you destroy any basis of their knowledge. You destroy their art. Everything goes, and that is a clear example as to why European enslavement, the European process of enslavement, was much more problematic than any other form of oppression and enslavement that came before it. So, and people like to say that Africans enslaved themselves before Europeans were ever there, and that's true. However, uh, the type of enslavement, the keeping the people bound to you for life, enslaving their kids, raping the women, destroying their sense of self, destroying their knowledge. That was new. That was new. So while slavery has existed for as long as people have been on this planet, the type of oppression that Africans experienced during the Ma'afa was was a new understanding of what it means to be oppressed, of what genocide means to the human family. And I think that's an important point that we must focus on. Also, the process of enslavement was not just on the European side of the ocean, but as well on the Arabic side. They have had a what enslavement. They have been enslaving Africans. The Arabic nations have been enslaving Africans for centuries,
Hmm.
longer than Europeans, to be quite frank. So you know, we can't let them off the hook as well. We usually like to focus on what Europeans have done, but the Arabic enslavement, how they have enslaved people through the mechanism of Islam, like Europeans enslaved Africans through the mechanism of Christianity, is just as bad, as, if not worse, than what we've experienced on the Atlantic side of the ocean. All right.
Wow. I mean, listening to all of this and hearing about all of these atrocities that has been meted on human life, do you think that this kind of met with any sort of resistance? Was there any sort of resistance that had been offered, during this time?
Yes. Move this forward a little bit. Um, um, let's just give more context to the
Context.
Maafa. Yeah, give more
Mm.
context to the Maafa. Um, this happened during what the Europeans call the Age of Discovery. So they were attempting to uh, understand who they were, when they went out into the world, when they left Europe. And they took it upon themselves to um, civilize what they termed or what they thought was uncivilized lands. So they went into the countries. They use mechanisms of deceit, of greed, sparking battles and skirmishes amongst the people, amongst African people, in order to separate them and further exploit them. So they use our differences to exploit us. Essentially, is what I'm saying. So this was the first part. This is how uh, um, Europeans became a part, or sold themselves into the con or the fabric of African society. All right, they made themselves into middlemen in which they uh, became brokers with both groups or a number of groups in order to sow discord and sow disunity. And then after this period, we have the anti-colonial wars, the anti-slavery movement, and the anti-lynching movement that came out of the 1980, excuse me, 1800s and the 1900s. And this is where we get to see the pushback. All right, and this is not the only place where we see pushback against enslavement. As I've mentioned before, Africans were always struggling against this process. Were always They were never passive in their own oppression. They always pushed back, but we see a more organized and a stronger pushback in the 1800s and the 1900s through various movements. And again, just to give you context of the type of constant conflict that was waged during this time. Again, this is just a few examples, a few of the shining examples that I wanted to highlight of Africans pushing against enslavement and colonization. So we have the Palmares, a community of Brazil. They are a Maroon community who defend themselves against the Portuguese for a number of decades in the hills of Brazil. You have an army of female warriors called the Awalo out of Senegal who fought off the oppression of colonization. We have the Zulu Wars of South Africa, led by Shaka Zulu and a number of other Zulu kings. You have the Ashanti Wars, led by Sister Ya Santiwa, who fought harder to defend the Ashanti Kingdom. You have the Haitian Revolution, which is still the only independent African nation in the Western Hemisphere, because they fought, they won their independence, and although it is a poor nation, a struggling nation, they have their freedom, and I think that's an important point that we can cling to. They have the Nat Turner Rebellion of Virginia here in the United States, one of the more famous rebellions. You have the Ebo Landing, which was a case of African people winning their freedom, but after they won their freedom, as opposed to being re-enslaved or having to struggle in this new land, they all decided to collectively commit suicide rather than be re-enslaved or to live in a land that was not their home. This happened in around the Georgia Sea Islands. You have the German Coast Uprising in Louisiana. You have the Buses Rebellion in Trinidad and Tobago, the Demaria Rebellion of Guyana, the Baptist Wars of Jamaica, the Fire Queen Rebellion of St. Croix, the Alab Dinka of the Sudan, who defeated British garrisons with spears and indigenous knowledge of their land during the colonial period. So you see this constant pushback, right? So that's to say, African people were never, never subdued. They never took their oppression, as if they didn't care about their own lives. They always struggled against it. They always pushed against European oppression and continued to fight regardless of the circumstances.
Wow, wow, amazing. I don't know if Professor Kanu would want to add any question regarding the resistance, or you just want to go on and talk about the diversity of resistance, because I see your slide.
No, I don't have any question to ask, but just a quick addition, and that is, I'm glad that I have found a new vocabulary, which is this term called Maafa. So thank you for sharing that, because I have been trying to replace the term colonialism, because I think oftentimes when we use that term, we don't realize the damage that was done to African people.
Yeah.
That term colonialism and other variants have been sanitized.
Right.
In fact, what do I mean? Like if you walk down the street where I am, you will see a sign that says Colonial Life Insurance.
Right.
My university used to have a hall called Colonial Room.
Yeah.
Right. So, and in fact, you still have buildings, built in colonial style. So
That's
there is
right.
still this romance that people have with colonial and colonialism. But it is really a terrible thing that happened during that time. Not only did the bodies of Africans were consumed, but their culture, as you rightly pointed out, were decimated, right? And so I prefer to say, use a much longer term, socio-economic parasitization. It was a parasitization process. I mean, it was like when you have a parasite feed on a host.
Yep.
That is exactly what happened to Africans. Yep. And so I thank you for sharing this new term, and I just learned that. So I'll be using that term now moving forward as I write.
Yeah, and I think, Dr. Osiri, that you really hit the nail on the head with the sanitation of the language. It's it's extremely problematic when we do accept these terms as just being the way it is, instead of understanding the morally demonstrative spirit behind it. And I think that that's clear when we move, and use the language of Maafa. This is a great disaster, and not only is it good because it seeks to unsanitize the word colonization, but it's a term that could be an umbrella term for all of African people, right? Because colonization is specific to the continent and to certain Caribbean countries, but in the States, slavery is all we have, right? We weren't colonized necessarily. We were brought from somewhere, and we're here now. So the My Alpha kind of gives you a clear understanding of this was a great disaster on all ends, And again, not to let the Arabic enslavement off as well. We can make sure that this is addressed through what they have done or what they continue to do in the world, in the African world.
Now, Dr. Paul, now that you're speaking, just a question or a comment just popped up on the chat by Ame. He's saying that, can we also connect Kebuka to the term Maafa?
I'm not familiar with the term Kebuka. What is?
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably he'll shed more light on that. But I just mentioned. Okay.
Yeah, please, yeah, because I've never. That's my first time I've heard that expression.
Okay.
Yeah.
He says it means to remember.
Yes. Sankofa as well is also a Ghanaian term, which means to look back, to never forget. And that it's important that we look back in a number of regards, right? We look back to the greatness of Africa, and but we also look back to our failings as well, to learn and move forward, right? And I'm not sitting here talking about that my alpha in order to tell you that white people are bad. That's not the point. It's just to display this is the history, this is what it is, and if we are to move forward and to build a better world for ourselves, we need to be honest about our history, both the good things as well as the bad, in order so we can rebuild ourselves as part of the human family. So I just wanted to move forward, discuss the diversity of resistance that has existed all over Africa and as well in the Americas. You have physical resistance. It's physically fighting against your enslaver or uh, your colonizer. One story I like is um, Frederick Douglass, the anti-slavery hero in the States. Frederick Douglass, he physically fought his master to win his freedom. So he didn't, and it's not a judgment call, but he didn't run away from he physically fought his master, right? So, and then after he physically fought his master to gain his freedom, he fought intellectually in politics and throughout the United States in order to push this notion of freedom forward. Harriet Tubman escaped, and then she helped more than 300 people escape from slavery. As well, she fought in the Civil War. So this is the physical struggle, and then we have the spiritual religious struggle, where we begin to develop our own understanding of things, or through cultural maintenance, right? So if I maintain my religious traditions, this is the spiritual struggle, right? I'm refusing to accept a white Christian God, or I'm refusing to accept a Muhammad as my spiritual leader, because I already have something. And for me to maintain that spiritual belief system is resistance in itself. And also syncretism is a type of resistance, where I blend your tradition with my tradition in order to maintain the integrity of my spiritual life. That's another form of resistance. And then again, you have the intellectual resistance. David Walker's appeal is one example. Frederick Douglass is another example. Ida B. Wells is another shining example of intellectual resistance here in the States. And this pushes me to one of my favorite heroes in the Pan African struggle, which is Kwame Nkrumah. And I just wanted to stop for a moment and give a chance for questions and comments at this point before we move on with Dr. Nkrumah?
Okay, I don't think there are any questions yet on the Q&A. So if there are any questions, I would probably stop. I think one thing that I wanted to mention was the slide before this on resistance, because I think some people would have loved for you to unpack that, looking at the diversity of resistance and how this kind of expressed itself, and what were the results that were recorded as a result of this sort of resistance. I know that some of them were quite there in terms of the fact that they died, fighting for it, but some of them, are kind of landmarks or markers that we look back at and make reference to whilst we, have this conversation. So if you want to shed a little bit more on especially the intellectual bit, because that's something I think we'll be really interested in, and how we now can harness that, in the current struggles that we face.
Right. Well, I'll just instead of elaborating individually on certain characters, I would just say that the struggle against European oppression, any little bit that we do to push against oppression is important. Ida B. Wells, she was focused on the anti-lynching movement of the time, and she started out by refusing to be pushed off a train. She was much like what happened in with Claudette Colvin in Alabama in the United States with the desegregation of the buses. Trains were very much segregated in the United States, and she was asked as well to give up her seat for a white person on a train, and she refused. And it's kind of a funny story because I'm picturing this little woman who was on the train and being forced to leave, and she physically, cemented herself in the train and would not allow herself to be pushed out. She, spread her arms, spread her legs, and refused to be taken off the train because of her rights as a human being. And then she went on to champion this cause of desegregation and champion the movement of anti-lynching. And again, it starts out with just the refusal, just stopping and saying no. You will not. I will not allow you to do this to me. I will not allow you to treat me as less than a human being. And that little kernel, that little bit, that no, those two letters, are such a powerful word, such a powerful notion that I don't think that we take seriously enough to just stop and say no, no more. You will not do that. I will not allow you to do this to me. Or if I see it happening, I will not allow you to do this to this person. And this is exactly what you see going on today with the continued resistance to oppression, throughout the world. People are stopping and just saying, no, we will not allow you to do this. We will not allow you to take away our humanities, to subject me to any form of oppression. And again, I just want to impress upon the audience the importance of no, of saying no, and making movement to demonstrate that you are serious as a human being, and you will not be allowed, you will not allow any person to oppress you. And that's the essence of this whole course, is the cementing of this word no, and the actions that it takes to make something better, to make something different, to grow, to make yourself grow into something that you are.
Now, I mean, Frank, following up from what you said, Frank is asking a question.
Yes.
Can it be related to prisoners of war other than slavery? So I
Yeah.
don't. Frank is here, but he might want
Yeah.
to shed more light on his question.
Yeah, that's Frankie. You can definitely shed more light on the question.
Right. Thank you. Sorry for joining late. I was somewhere committed, but thank God,
Yeah.
it's still on the way. I just wanted to ask. The question was then when you mentioned that there was slavery in existence here in Africa before the coming of the European. Uh, Basically, I was asking, could that be related to the prisoners of war? Because we had many kingdoms, and each kingdom was defending themselves, and those that were defeated, of course, they were taken into prison. And could we just look at it? That was a kind of slavery that was existing, or something different? That is one. And the second question that I just wanted to ask, because of the explanation that you gave last year, uh, when our people were resisting this slavery, you know, by that time there were no laws that were put down. But in this season we are in, or this period we are in, we have so much laws that these foreigners have put in place. As we struggle to say no, physically or whatever, in whatever way, we have ways they are using to oppress and to silence us. And what other way can we use apart from just saying no? But then when our people say no, they are saying no, there was no laws in place, but now they're using the laws that they have put in place.
Yeah. Well, just to clarify, the saying no is just the first step, right? It's just the first step. I'm not saying that this is all we have. Is just, but that's the first step. Is just to say no. Um, and on to the prisoners of war question. One thing that I've learned over the years is that a lot of people do refer to people, the colonies, people who've been colonized, or people who've been colonized, or people who've been enslaved as prisoners of war. As this is not this is a 500-year long plus war that we are continuing to fight. There's a lot of people who do understand it as that, as this is a war. We're in it. It's a widespread, very widespread war covering several continents, but it is just that. And so a lot of people do use that language when speaking about enslavement and colonization as part of a larger war. Yes, that's a very good point that you bring up. Yeah, but again, just to impress upon or to belabor the point, um, to say no again, that's just the first step, but it's an important step. It's a critical step. When you say no and you make actions to move against the oppression, that we've already won. We've already won. All that we need to do further is to set things right. But saying no and moving in that direction, or moving a direction towards freedom, that's a huge step that we do not need to take for granted. Every victory, every little tiny victory, we need to keep close to our hearts. Is the point I'm trying to impress upon right now. Any other questions?
I think there's some questions on the chat. Someone is saying, I think David is saying, resistance increases our chances of survival. Non-violence harm us. Do you agree with this statement? That's the question. Should Black Africans have resistance movements around issues of police brutality?
Definitely, definitely. And it doesn't always have to be violent. Non-violence resistance is important as well. But sometimes I must say that violence might be necessary in order to get your point across. But yeah, I would definitely agree with that statement.
That's great. You can carry on with the Kwame Nkrumah because you were trying to tell us
Yeah.
something quite interesting about him.
All right. Yeah. I'll share the screen again.
Okay.
All right. So this is Kwame Nkrumah, and for those who don't know, he is the first president of Ghana. All my Ghanaian brothers and sisters out there, peace to you guys. So just to give you some little background, Um, he had a as growing up, he saw the problems of British imperialism in Ghana. He was a witness to a lot of what was going on in the Ashanti Wars. Either he didn't participate in the Ashanti Wars, but he learned about it as part of Ghanaian history. So he understood at a, a very young and fundamental level that Ghana as a country, or as it was called back then, Gold Coast, has been engaged in the struggle for a long time. And he connected dots, right? So he didn't just focus on Ghana. He connected what was going on in Ghana with other countries, in particular, what was going on in Ethiopia with the efforts of the Italians to colonize Ethiopia. So he made the connection. He didn't just see Ghana as this one example. He understood that what was happening in Ghana was also happening in Nigeria. It's happening in Ethiopia. It's happening all over the continent of Africa. All right. So then he, in the process of in his learning process, he went to the United States. One of the places that he went was the United States, where he would study, and he studied at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Well, why is that significant? Because Lincoln University is a historically, what we call here, a historically black college slash university, HBCU. That's what we call it in the States, historically black college or university. Now, this is important because while he was there, he began to connect with his brothers and sisters here in the States. All right. So he was able to learn what oppression was like from us here in the States. And he was able to start connecting the dots. And one of the things that he did was during this time there were book clubs and kind of like Ubuntu meetings that were being started in Harlem and in other black urban centers like Philadelphia. So he would go to these places to learn. And again, he's connecting these dots. He's connecting the dots between what's going on in the United States and what's going on in his home country of Ghana and throughout the continent. So he's collecting all this information. So I'm trying to see myself as this young man who came from Ghana, who went to the United States, who went to a black school, and then started connecting with the students. And then from there, he starts to open up this kernel of knowledge of Africa's past and Africa's historical achievements and its glory. He attended black churches, so he's understanding the cultural connection that we see that is kind of seen in churches. The way African people worship here in the States in churches is similar to how he saw African people worshiping in Ghana. So he's connecting these cultural dots, he's connecting these intellectual dots, and he's developing into this person that is going to work to bring the African world together. And then he joined Phi Beta Sigma. Phi Beta Sigma is a historically black organization, much like Alpha Phi Alpha or Omega Psi Phi or Alpha Kappa Alpha. For those who are not familiar, these are African American fraternities that are specifically for black people, right? Because we were not allowed into white fraternities or white social organizations, so we had to start our own like the Black University. We were not allowed into white universities, so we had to start our own. This is what Lincoln. This is Lincoln University is a product of that. Phi Beta Sigma is a product of the social organizations that are developed as a consequence of racism and segregation. So he joins this organization, Phi Beta Sigma, which again further connects him to the African world outside of Africa and outside of Ghana. And again, he spent his summers in Harlem at the book club. And Harlem at this point in the 1920s, 1930s, this is the black mecca of the Western Hemisphere, right? If you're in Harlem, You're learning about everything that it is to be Black, because there were social organizations were big there. The book clubs were there, and we have the UNIA, the United Negro Improvement Association, developed by Marcus Garvey. That's going on at this time. You have the religious movements, the Nation of Islam, the Moorish Science Temple. All these organizations, all these movements are happening in this Mecca, what we call the Black Mecca of New York, Harlem. All right. So again, try to place yourself, as this young man who's come from Ghana, who's seeing the problems of colonization in his country. He connects it to the problems that's going on in Ethiopia. He comes to the States and he's like, "Oh, you guys are dealing with the same thing, just different, right?" So he's seeing all of this, and this is the foundation of you know of developing who Kwame Nkrumah is. All right, I just wanted to. So out of this, he aligns with several, many great thinkers of the time. W.E.B. Du Bois, who helped to develop the Pan African Congress, and actually who later retired to Ghana because he could not stand the racism in America anymore. So he retired to Ghana when he was older, and he actually his body is still in Ghana because that's where he retired and died. And George Padmore as well was another important figure in the development of the Pan African Congress. So as after he leaves Lincoln University and leaves the States, he makes efforts throughout London as well as Ghana towards building a Pan African establishment. He begins with the West African National Secretariat, the United Gold Coast Convention, and the People's Convention Party. And all these are political parties that he either was a part of or started himself in order to push independence forward, independence for Ghana, which happened on March 6, 1957. Um, excuse me. So here we go again, bringing all that he learned in the States and learned in London and learned in Ethiopia. He becomes the first president of Ghana, and he starts to develop the symbology of Ghana with this new nation state of Ghana. So we have the development of the Ghanaian flag. And the Ghanaian flag is important because it shares the same colors with Ethiopia, which again connects to the Pan African struggle, and as well that black star right in the middle. He pulled that from Marcus Garvey's organization, which developed the Black Star Line, which was meant to be an ocean line company that would take African Americans back to Africa, right? So he is the quintessential Pan Africanism of the last 100 years. He is the shining example of what it would take to push this Pan African notion forward. This notion that we are one people and we have the right to be and to express ourselves on this planet as a united African people. And I just I love his story. I've had a chance to visit his burial site in Ghana several times. I had the privilege and pleasure of taking students to Ghana many years ago, and we would always stop by Du Bois's house in Ghana as well. We'll also go by the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial, and would always try to impress upon my students of the importance of this man, in our continued struggle for African liberation, global African liberation. So as we sit here on this platform, of Osiri University, we are definitely the children of Kwame Nkrumah. We are inheriting, in essence, inheriting the same struggle, the same charge, in order to push this movement forward for African liberation on a global scale. And I know that was a lot, so let me stop there and see if anybody has any questions or see if anybody wants to have engage in any conversation.
I don't have any question, but I do have something to offer maybe at the end of your presentation in form of a critique maybe, but I'll wait till the very end.
Good.
So
All
I'm
right.
not presumptuous.
Right, right. Actually, all right. So here are a couple of
There is a
quotes.
question, if you may. I mean, it's in line with your
Yeah, good.
discussion. Maybe should we leave that to the end and just allow you finish the presentation?
No, go ahead. Oh, go
I
ahead.
think it's a very interesting question, so I'll leave it to the end. Carry on.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
all right. Um, so here are some quotes, Kwame Nkrumah that I just wanted to highlight for the class. I am not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. You know, this is speaking to, you know, African people. Again, we're widespread people, and just because you weren't born in Africa doesn't mean you're not African. Malcolm X used to say that just because a cat has kittens in the oven, that does not make them biscuits. You know, meaning that just because I was born in the United States, it doesn't make me any less or any more African, because there's a certain cultural consciousness that I bring, that I carry with me every day, because of who I am. Kwame Nkrumah also said Africa is a paradox which illustrates and highlights neo-colonialism. Her earth is rich, yet the products that some from above and below the soil continue to enrich not Africans predominantly, but groups of individuals who operate to Africa's impoverishment. And this speaks to something that we talked about yesterday in the indigenous knowledge class, is that Africa is full of stuff that people want but don't want to work for. So all the material resources and the human resources that are in Africa, these are precious, and there's a reason why Africa is in the position that it's in. It's because Africa has something that the world wants and does not want to pay for. So these things are important when we we're pushing towards our freedom. We have to understand that we have all the resources, both human and natural, that we will ever need. So we just need to trust ourselves as we push forward. Um, he also said independence is only a prelude to a more involved struggle for the right to conduct our own economic and social affairs. So he's saying, the development of Ghana, the establishment of Ghana as a nation state was only the beginning. And in this again, this is, as I said earlier, when we say no to oppression, that's just the beginning, right? We say that to establish ourselves, and establish our to plant our feet in the sand, or anchor ourselves in the earth as we push forward. But that's just the first step, right? Independence was just the first step for something more. Africa is one continent, one people, and one nation. All right. Again, speaking to the collective nature of African people, that regardless of what language you speak, we have similar interests in preserving the state of Africa as a sovereign place. So I'll go ahead and stop there, because that's pretty much the end of the conversation. I do have the works cited. I'll put up the works cited after we finish, so people can look this stuff up for themselves. But I'll go ahead. Yeah, there we go.
Fantastic. Just go on and ask. Thank you so much, Dr. Easterling, for that wonderful and stimulating presentation.
My pleasure.
There's a question here regarding the just concluded slide. Can you explain why the Ghanaian people betrayed Nkrumah?
No, honestly, I cannot. just much more context to that. I think that I'm only so familiar with Ghanaian, the internal minutia of Ghanaian politics. There's a lot that I need to learn about, later Ghanaian politics, but at this present moment, I can't speak intelligently on that, and I'd rather not speak on something than say something and sound stupid. Um, uh, there is always political struggles, and there are always, people who do not agree with the path, that one person is going. There's many problems we can pull out of anybody's life. So we can pick them apart all we like, but I think that um, if we're looking towards examples of how we are to push forward, um, Kwame Nkrumah is one of the more important people that we should study. And that's not to say that we overlook the problems that came with him. I mean, we can look at Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and a number of other people, and um, see a lot of problems that they had in their lives, a lot of things that we would not agree with, and how they lived. This is part of the human condition, because everything that I do, people are not going to agree with. But I just can't speak any further than that, because I know there are a number of issues that people have with the little things that he did or didn't do.
Yeah, I do agree with that. That's a very intelligent, well put response. Because again, there are certain institutions that could facilitate or, impede progress in different societies, not particularly to Ghana. It could happen anywhere.
Right.
And again, classic example, the United States now with the situation around politics, and quite very interesting what is being unraveled, and people are watching to see what will be the next step. So it's not just peculiar to say Africa, but again, I would say that sometimes some of the things that happen within these institutions within Africa, sometimes it's as if we are self-sabotaging ourselves. I mean, not speaking about the particular instance that you referred to, but just looking at it generally as to what happens and how governments are being structured.
Right.
So maybe something that we really need to think about and reflect on,
Yeah.
and
And
consider
just
how best to move it forward. Yes.
right. And just to say further, people are people. So never at any point, in any of my lectures am I trying to put one person up on a pedestal and say that this is it, they're it, or like there's some savior character. People are people, and we have our good sides and our bad sides. And I just want people to keep that in mind as we study history, and we look forward that, if one of us was to make a great impact, we'll say, well, wait a minute, I know that person did da 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 da. So we all have our shortcomings, and again, that's not to excuse him. That's not to excuse him for anything, but my focus was just understanding, how he moved around the planet, literally, and developed himself and grew as a human being and as an African, and the product of that, what is the nation state that we know now is Ghana, and I don't think we can take that from him.
I particularly agree with what you're saying, because sometimes when we look at history, some people are looking at it from a lens to pick the faults and see the inadequacies and the flaws,
Right.
rather than seeing areas where this has actually brought us this far and how we can actually facilitate the good things about it and move it forward, rather than being focused on things that didn't work, or again the inadequacies of the people involved in facilitating this change. So I think that that's something we also need to do, and kind of rethinking our mindset and how we kind of view history and educate ourselves intellectually to move these conversations forward. So thank you, Dr. Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we look at Martin Luther King, right? We love to raise up Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther King's personal history has some sketchy elements to it. Somebody said that he used to sleep with other women besides his wife. I can't say, I was never there, right? So I can't say for or against, if he did that or not. But I think what's important out of Martin Luther King's life is not just that, but that he struggled to create a new paradigm for understanding freedom in the United States. And I don't think that his human flaws take away from that.
I do want to quickly offer a perspective. It's not really a criticism per se of Kwame Nkrumah, but it is a broader observation about how African people have built or had built resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things Kwame Nkrumah also espoused was communism.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about that, I mean, obviously, we need to be very clear, first of all, that when African people, whether it's the Black Panther movement, in the Black Panther movement, or Africans on the continent, mm-hmm. whenever they talked about bringing communism, it was never the idea of bringing in like a communist China or Stalin's
right.
communism.
Man,
it was never
right.
an oppressive type of communism. Right. Let's be very clear on that.
Right.
But in their mind, it was giving power back to the people, given sort of an impetus to the working class, and having government play a major role in helping build up the working class and alleviating poverty. That was what they meant, which was all good. But I think it was still a mistake to adopt that label of communism. But I think what happens is when African people resist, they tend to look around and see what's in opposition to what we are resisting, and they pick that.
Right.
So
yeah, that's true.
We had pure capitalism that had gone awry, and we saw that in manifested in the form of slavery, because slavery is a form of capitalism.
Yes, it is.
And on steroids.
Right.
And so capitalism was about let's maximize profit at any cost, right? So they looked around and said, how can we push back against this capitalist form of economics? And they picked communism, which was not African. It was communism and capitalism. This pure form of capitalism was
same thing with Islam
developed in Europe.
Same
That's
thing with
mistake
Islam.
I think Africans make. We see that also in the US when Africans looked around. The oppressor is a Christian, so now I'm going to pick Islam.
That's right.
Same thing.
Exactly.
So they picked Islam as opposed to looking at what is African, what is taking about strength-based approach. I think the strength-based approach for Africans to take is to Sankofa, right? Is to go back and say, okay, what worked for our ancestors? Let's take that. Let's take that spiritual form. Let's take that economic form, that approach to leadership that worked for our ancestors, not just to pick the opposite of what is or the enemy of our enemy, and
make it my friend,
and then fight with those people. So that is something I think we have to think about as we move along this trajectory, not to mistake again. And we have a representative democracy. It's not African, where you vote for people no, Africans believe in Ubongi. Somebody just posted that also, in Ubongi. And the Ubongi is this idea of consensus development. You spend time deliberating. There may not be any vote, but you deliberate, and it might take a while to deliberate. But by the time we come to a consensus, people's voices have been heard. So you can vote, and still your voices are not heard.
Right.
You see, but Africans were very particular about making sure people's voices were heard. So that is, in my opinion, a government system we should look at and say, how can we infuse this back into today's day and age, right? When we take a look at spirituality, right? Let's take a look at what our people did. Again, I'm not saying we should abandon Islam or abandon Christianity, but if you espouse to that, well and good. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't be looking at taking things because it's in diametric opposition to the oppressor. Let's look truly what our ancestors practiced and what worked for them and what it meant, and try to imbibe that into our way of spirituality. Yeah. And for me, I say our African spirituality is a castle that in Ubuntu, in our human connection, right? If I treat you like a human, to me, that is being spiritual. If I work tirelessly to uplift you, that is my spirituality. That is how I'm connected to you. That is how I show my love to you, right? And I'm not talking about doing unto you as I want people to do unto me. No. I'm talking about just looking at you as a human and say, look, you deserve to be treated as a human. Anyways, I can go on, but I just thought I should share that a little bit. Maybe we can talk about this some other time.
You hit the nail on the head with the enemy of my enemy is my friend quote, because that is sometimes, we did in these states, we went against Christianity for Islam only because Christians had a problem with Muslims, and we weren't really thinking about our indigenous systems at that point, and that because we just part of our growth, right? We weren't thinking that. We were just thinking, well, let's go to the people who these people don't like, and then we'll call ourselves that, and we'll just continue to piss white folks off, which it did that, but it's not the end point, right? So Kwame Nkrumah was a communist. Yeah, he may have been pushing against capitalism, which in itself has a number of problems, as anybody in the States can tell you, that just because we're living in a capitalist nation does not necessarily mean that you are free to all the capital that's available. Go ahead.
Interesting conversation. I mean, we can go on and on. I'm just looking at the time. It's not as if I'm interested in the conversation. Quite very interesting. But I just wanted to wrap up this. There are kind of very interesting questions here. I don't want to overshoot. I just want to plead with our attendees just 2 minutes, just so you can just touch on these questions. And briefly, one of it is your comparison. So what do you think about Kwame Nkrumah to Gaddafi? So how would you compare both of them? So whilst you're still thinking about that, the same person is asked, can you touch on the epigenetic impact of MAFA on Africans and the post-traumatic slave disorder? So these are two questions. I did the three of them, but I think I'll just pick two of these and allow you just,
So Muammar Gaddafi, admittedly, I don't know as much about Muammar Gaddafi as I do Kwame Nkrumah, but he, from what I do know, he was definitely interested in developing this Pan-African world, and he used to go and speak at the African unions, and to implore the African leaders to look within themselves. As far as that is concerned, I agree with his politics, but there's much more I'd like to learn about him and his philosophy. So just that there. And what was the second question?
You are mute.
Okay. The second question says, can you touch on the epigenetic impact the MAFA have on Africans and post-traumatic slave disorder?
So I can't speak on epigenetics because that's not my field. But to just push the conversation forward, there's definitely PTSD that we still suffer from here in the States. It's in the Caribbean, and I'm sure the African colonies, there's still PTSD as well, because these were extremely violent times. These are extremely violent times, and I can make the argument that what we see sometimes with black on black crime or black on black hate is likely a product of that PTSD. We still kind of cling to the values of the oppressor, and we don't see the value in ourselves because we've been devalued for so long, right? We this is it's easier for us to take black life because it's been devalued, right? It's easy for us to look down on ourselves and to think ourselves ugly or whatever because of the devalue, because we've been devalued through colonization and enslavement through this myafa.
Yeah.
That is definitely an issue. African American and African psychologists have studied this for decades. So that's definitely something that's out there. It's
Thank
definitely.
you. Thank you, Dr. Paul. Thank you. Thank you. This is like knowledge packed. Thank you so much. I think we'll just have to wrap up here. I don't know if Janisha has got any announcements before I draw this to a close today.
Hello, everyone. If we have an instructor workshop. Nene Saturday will be teaching her class. If you're interested, please join the link that's posted in, it's the usual link that we have. Please click on that link to head over to that class after we're done. And Dr. Easterling, I think you may want to follow up with your students. Chris had his hand raised, but we're at time. So if you
Okay.
can follow up with him after,
All
later
right.
on.
Yeah, I'll get with you, Chris. Sorry about it. There's a lot going on, but just thank you for everybody who attended. Thank you for my students. To my students, we'll talk further in the emails, and we'll go further with the assignments. Next week we'll talk about BLM, NSARS, and a number of issues that we are dealing with in the 21st century. All right.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you,
so
everyone.
much. Thank you, everyone. All our attendees, thank you. Ubuntu to you all. Thank you.
Ubuntu.